How's everyone doing? I want to share some new information that is being put out there with the Bryan Kohberger Moscow Idaho tragedy. Come on in, let's talk. There's some new information that just got put out today. Information that I've never seen, and I've been covering this case extensively since the tragedy happened. And there is a new article out that I want to share. Come on in. 6/11. 6/11/2023. Month is halfway over. Every time I come on, I say, the month is halfway over. It is halfway over June. Time flies. Time flies. So come on in. We'll talk. We'll have a discussion. We're going to talk new information. We're going to talk about the word exculpatory evidence. We're going to talk about different makes and models of vehicles. We're going to talk about records that a publication is claiming is out there about information regarding the Moscow, Idaho investigation. Some new stuff, kind of juicy. It's interesting, for sure. But I'll wait for a few people to come on. Happy, Sunday? Sunday, people. Hope everyone is having a blessed day. Hope everyone is having a blessed day. But there is a new article out. And I want to share this report because there's a lot of things in this report that I have not been aware of. And yeah, this is a pretty good reporter, right? This is a pretty good reporter that has been covering the case. So hopefully we will decipher through and discuss what this all means. And we will talk. Let me make sure my chat window is open. Live chat. Okay. Can everyone hear me? Just give me a hello, somebody, because I haven't seen a comment yet. Someone can hear me. We'll talk, and then we'll go from there. We will go from there. Inside the hunt for the Idaho Killer. New article. Hug. Hey. All right. So this is a new article out. And it's called Inside the Hunt for the Idaho Killer. It's by the New York Times, and it came out today. This article came out today. After 4 students were stabbed to DEATH in a house near a college campus, investigators scooped up data and forensic evidence hoping for leads. A new DNA technique finally brought a breakthrough. And this article is written by Mike Baker, and he's a very reputable New York Times journalist. And he shares a lot. I would call some of the information in this article that I'm sharing here bombshell information that we have not heard of. I'm going to wait for bombshell information. So, this is today, or it's actually yesterday, June 10th, 2023. We'll read, and then we will discuss. In the weeks after the 4 University of Idaho students were found slaughtered in a house near the campus last November, a growing roster of investigators desperately searched for answers had yet to identify a suspect or even find the murder weapon. Publicly, the authorities were assuring worried residents in the small college town that they were making progress. Privately, they were exhausting their prospects, scouring through the backgrounds of those with the thinnest possible connections to the case. Let's go on. Through the first 2 weeks of December, investigators put some of their focus on classmates of the victims. This is new stuff here, people. Through the first 2 weeks of December, investigators put some of their focus on classmates of the victims. They also widened the search to examine a man in another state who has been known to send harassing messages to women, but had visited Idaho only twice in his life. They looked at a woman previously charged with assault in the region. They looked at a man once accused of wielding a knife. I think that's James Curtis Leonard, this guy. They looked at registered SOs. They even looked at a white supremacist. each turned out to be a dead end. So this article is saying they looked at specific people as suspects in this case. This is new to me exactly who they looked at. And they're saying in the first 2 weeks of December. Now remember, the crime happened November 13th, 2022. So within the first 2 weeks of December, weeks after the crime, they were focusing on classmates of the victims. Who could that be? Who could that be? They also widened their search to examine a man in another state who has been known to send harassing messages to women. Who could that be? They looked at a woman previously charged with assaults in the region. Who could that be? They looked at a man once accused of wielding a knife. Now, I believe the wielding the knife guy was James Curtis Leonard. We've heard that name. That was the man that was accused of doing something to his wife. There was a booking shot with him with cuts on his arm. They looked at registered SOs. They even look at a white supremacist. Now, who's the white supremacist that they looked at? He doesn't name drop. But it is interesting. Through the months of December, they were focusing on classmates of the victims because they had no idea. They had no idea. But it's fair to say, when a lot of those speculation videos were going out for the first month and people were pointing fingers in it, everywhere, the way this reporter is saying it, there was, in fact, classmates of the victims who were being looked at that time. And that's kind of like the process of what investigators do in the early stages of investigation. But they were looking at people. But it gets better, people. It gets better because I found something very interesting in this report. And we will continue to read on. Why wouldn't they look at the classmates? Exactly. Why wouldn't they? You leave no stone unturned. But these classmates down the lines, even if you're being looked at or investigated, these classmates, and I'm assuming maybe people from Sigma Chi, who do you think? Sigma Chi people? There was a lot of cloud under Sigma Chi. What I'm trying to say is you can't really, if there is records that they were investigated and looked at, they can't down the line say that they were not looked at, when in fact it seems like, according to this report, people were looked at. And then somebody said, Rod of God, New York Times. So we have to kind of take this report at face value. Is it true or not? Because there's some stuff down here and down in this end of this report and through this report that I'm like, is this even true? Stuff that I didn't hear of prior. So we'll continue on reading, people. And we'll talk about it. It says, then, after spending weeks sifting through an array of evidence that seemed to lead nowhere, investigators announced an arrest in late December on the other side of the country. Bryan Kohberger, a PhD student from a nearby university. He was identified only after investigators turned to an advanced method of DNA analysis that had rarely been used in active murder investigations. The story of how dozens of officers from local, state, and federal agencies took the quadruple murder investigation into an extraordinary territory is only now becoming more apparent. Through recently obtained records, so they're saying this is obtained records that they got. I have no idea how they obtained these records. And interviews with people familiar with the investigation who discuss key details that emerged before the issuance of the gag order in the case. So this guy's pretty much saying records and people spoke before the gag order. I don't know if that's giving him cover or shield for this report. The case has shown the degree in which law enforcement investigators have come to rely on digital footprints that ordinary Americans leave in nearly every facet of their lives. Online shopping, car sales, carrying a cell phone, drives along city streets, and amateur genealogy all played roles in this investigation that was solved. In the end, as much through technology as traditional sleuthing. Now indicted on 4 counts of murder, Mr. Kohberger has declined to enter a plea, but contended previously, though, through his lawyers, that he would be exonerated. Investigators have yet to detail a possible motive. To this day, family members of the victims remain unaware of any prior connections that the accused killer had with the young people who were killed. So this report is saying to this day, they're saying it as a statement of fact, family members of the victims, and they're talking about the families of Ethan, families of Xana, families of Madison Mogen, families of the Gonzalez, Kaylee, are not aware of any connections. The process of identifying and arresting a suspect took over 6 weeks. Weeks of increasing frustration and painstaking examination of evidence as the community pushed for answers. The 911 call came around noon. We know a lot of this here. Some 7 hours after the murders of Madison, Kaylee, Xana, and Ethan had been stabbed to death overnight in their bedrooms. Initially, the Moscow Police Department described the attacks as targeted and assured residents that there was no risk to the public, but with no indication of who had committed the attack or why. The authorities eventually backtracked. And we were questioning that, right? About the targeted. Was it targeted or not? Because they did come out at the beginning and say it was targeted. And then later kind of pumped the brakes on that and like the report says here, backtracked. And that's kind of true. We cannot say that there is no threat to the community, Police Chief James Fry said in a news conference on November 16th, 3 days after the killings. The department, which had only a few dozen officers, enlisted the Idaho State Police, the FBI, to help bringing in dozens of additional investigators. Forensic teams processed evidence from the bedrooms, snapped photos around the home's back door, and hunted for footprints. Other searchers searched for surveillance video from around town. Here's the new information that I've never heard of right here. A week after the killings, records show investigators were on the lookout for a certain type of vehicle, a Nissan Sentra from the model years of 2019 to 2023. Quietly, they ran down details on thousands of such vehicles, including the owner's addresses, license plates, and color of the sedan. You notice something here? It's not a white Hyundai Elantra. They are saying a week after this happened, they were searching for Nissan Sentras from year 2019 and 2023. I have not heard of this allegation prior. Have you? Has anyone ever heard of a Nissan Sentra before the Hyundai Elantra? Because I have not. If you have, please share your source and share where you've seen that. Because I've never seen any reports anywhere with this case that investigators were originally looking for a Nissan Sentra. And that bothers me a little bit. What got them to look specifically for a Nissan Sentra? What do you think? Because I'm going to show you something right here. I'm going to show you a picture of a 2019 Nissan Sentra, and I'm going to show you a picture of a white Hyundai Elantra from 2013. I'm going to show you a pic. The top is a 2019 Nissan Sentra. The bottom is a 2013 white Hyundai Elantra. My gosh, they look pretty much the same, right? Almost identical, I guess. See, that's a little different there than there. I mean, the cars look sedan, little window on the side, almost alike. But my question is, why, if this is true in records, according to this report, they were looking for a Nissan Sentra? Because I didn't hear that. Quietly, they ran down details on thousands of such vehicles. So it seems like what this report is saying, according to records, is within 1 week after the killings happened, they were on the hunt for a Nissan Sentra. Not the white Hyundai Elantras. Nissan Sentras. Let's go on. Yeah, Nissan Sentra, because the report now says, or the article we're going on, but further scrutiny of the video footage produced more clarity. And on November 25th, the police in Moscow asked law enforcement agencies to look for a different type of car with a similar shape, white Hyundai Elantras, from the model years 2011 to 2013. So, like I said, they originally went from Nissan Sentras to now white Hyundai Elantras. Now, I've been debating myself, and I want to ask you guys, this is my thoughts when I think about this, right? At the beginning stages, for some reason, them looking for a Nissan Sentra, and then weeks later change tune and say a white Hyundai Elantra. And records show that they were looking for Nissan Sentra. Now, when we hear, this is where my thoughts are on this, and I want to know your guys' thoughts. When it comes to exculpatory evidence in a case, right? When the defense asks the prosecution for exculpatory evidence, and they ask the prosecution for records of any and all exculpatory evidence, I want to know your opinion. The fact that at the beginning stages they were looking for a Nissan Sentra, not a white Hyundai Elantra, would that be considered exculpatory evidence that could help Bryan? The fact that on record they were looking for a separate vehicle? Or do you think Ann Taylor would question that? Now, this is according to records on this article. The article could be fake news. Now, Scott Watts says, yes, 100%. And that's where my mind's going, because that, to me, again, you guys can change my mind. Truth and Transparency says no. Magnolia, my mod, says no. It does look similar. I mean, they are similar. But what got them to the conclusion that it was a white Sentra at the beginning and then change it over time? To it went from a Nissan Sentra 2019 to 2023 down to a white Hyundai Elantra 2011 to 2013. So they not only changed the vehicles, which do look alike, but the model year, the years, went significantly lower. Here's the difference again, people. It's weird the car changed. To me, I think, yeah. Crimes and Consequences says, nope, I think they gathered more camera footage and saw the Elantra. It was a mistake. But this is what they were originally looking for, according to records. And then after further review, then they changed it and said, we're going to look for this. And at the end of the day, believe it or not, well, you guys already know that. It wasn't even a 2011, 2013 Hyundai Elantra. Kohberger had a 2015. Could those discrepancies help Kohberger in any form or any way with his defense if they were originally looking for a different vehicle? It's a good question. It's a good question. I don't know the answer to that. That's why I'm asking you guys. Just across the state border, a Washington State University campus police officers began looking through their records for Elantras registered there. Among those they found was a registered one to Kohberger, who had moved to the area earlier in 2022 to pursue a PhD in criminology. They checked Mr. Kohberger's car more closely according to a court affidavit, including visiting the parking lot near his apartment in the early morning hours of November 29th. But the vehicle was a 2015 model, not the earlier models being sought in Moscow. And that's what's crazy, right? Because on November 29th, this is why I get so confused about this. Because on November 29th, when they first became aware of Kohberger, he didn't have 11 to 13 car. He had a 2015. Is that maybe one of the reasons why Kohberger maybe slipped past them and wasn't later identified way down the line? Because what I find interesting, somebody shared this. I presented this question on and Twitter, and an individual named Tammy responded. And this is the question I presented on Twitter. I said, New York Times is also claiming that a week after the murders, investigators were on the lookout for Nissan Sentras, model 2019 to 2023. This is new info to me. Is this report accurate? And an individual named Tammy responds, yes, because there are posts on Reddit from 6 months ago where they are talking about a white Sentra, white Sentra. Do a keyword search for Sentra to see all the different posts about it. Let me know if you can't find them and I will post them. And I respond, hello, I can't find, because I couldn't find any Reddit posts talking about a Sentra. She responds and says, regarding my comment, notes the day. Below is Good Morning America video on December 22nd, switching to an Elantra. Also occupants, plural, which was originally stated as a strong possibility. And also from Chatter. So, when did the media come out with the first time that they were looking for a white Honda Elantra? Was it around the 22nd? Or no, was it December 8th? Looks like it was posted on December 8th. She says 22nd. And they did say, at the time, occupant or occupants. I did hear it out of Lanier's mouth. December 7th, December 8th. That's when it was. She said 28th, but they're using these, if you look at the Good Morning America's tweet, she could not be right with her facts. Because I asked her to post the stuff on Reddit in reference to the thread she was claiming that it was on Reddit about the Sentras 6 months ago, and I haven't seen nothing. So this seems like it was the first time they publicly put out white Hyundai Elantras. December 8th or the 7th. Maybe the day before, and Good Morning America puts it out the next morning. So a 7th. Assuming 7th or 8th. But again, they're saying they're looking for a 2011 to 2013 at the time. November 29th, they can clearly see that Kohberger has a 2015 model. So is that kind of how Kohberger slipped from their radar at that point? Possibly. But make that make sense. When they ran Hyundai Elantras in the end of November, but see Kohberger has a 15, but then puts out bulletins on the 7th of December saying we're looking for 11 to 2013 model. At the same time, like I said, first week happened, after the murders happened, they're looking instead for a Sentra. So it goes from Sentras 2019 to 2023. It's sometime in the course in November, at the end of November, they ask people for 2011 to 2013 Hyundai Elantras. And then they ran Kohberger's on the 29th, but his was a 15. So in their mind at that point, are they just saying, oh, this guy is a 15. Let's just put him on the list, but he's not the guy. Seems like that was it. So that was like the first idea of him, but he couldn't be a suspect then because it was the wrong car. We're looking for 13 to 11, 13. He has a 15. That's not this guy. Next. It's the way it was. But here's something interesting too, what they did. And this is new information too. The next day, records show investigators in Moscow were also looking closely at another vehicle, Miss Gonzalez's car. She had purchased a 2015 Range Rover in the days before her death. Detectives gathered information on the registration, history, and legal owners, clearly interested in the history of who owned that car. But once again, the information provided few answers. So this is, this is probably common sense that you would think that they would check the victims' vehicles. And this is Kaylee's new Range Rover. Remember, Kaylee had a Range Rover. But this is new to me, according to records, that they actually searched information records on the registration of her vehicle, probably prior vehicle ownership to that. With students at the University of Idaho preparing for final exams, there was a permanent sense of apprehension in the air as people began locking their doors, acquiring pepper spray, and asking on social media how such a brazen killer could remain undetected for so long in a town that didn't see a murder in 7 years. Last time they had that murder was John Lee case that they made a plea deal with, by the way. The hunt brought it as investigators vacuumed up more records and data. They had already sought a cell phone data from all phones that pinged cell towers within a half mile of the victim's house from 3 a.m. to 5 a.m. According to search warrant filings, they collected victims' bank accounts, email correspondence, and social media data. We know a lot of this. We've been seeing the reports. But this is new to me, too. This is something I've never heard of either. On December 5th, detectives made a new request for surveillance video seeking all footage record on UPS delivery trucks in the days before and after the killings. And I believe that they were looking, I guess UPS was listed on the warrant, but I didn't really know specifics out of that. Did you guys know about the UPS trucks? And why would they feel like that's relevant? The next day, after gathering back data back on Miss Gonzalez's account on Tinder dating app, detectives asked for details on 19 specific account holders, including their locations, credit card information, and private images, pictures, and videos associated with accounts. I got a question. And I'm not saying anything bad about Kaylee, but wasn't she in an actual relationship with Jack DeCore? And why would she have a Tinder? Why would she be on Tinder? Or were they actually officially broke up? Can someone answer that? Does somebody know? Does anyone know? Refreshing. They were on a break. So they were on a break, and then she had a Tinder app. And I think the police did a good job in their due diligence in this investigation on all the victims. If any of them had any social media accounts, you go through and check. The request allowed the inquiry to go much broader than an ordinary search for information, using a single warrant to target 19 different people, said Orrin Kerr, law professor at the University of California, Berkeley. They said 19 different people here. I've never heard these terms. These are terms, some of this stuff in these reports that I'm reading is stuff that I did not know prior. They wanted to... The request allowed the inquiry to go much broader than an ordinary search for information, using a single warrant to target 19 different people. What does that mean? Who are the 19 people? You couldn't get one warrant to search 19 houses, he said. Investigators were also working with a key piece of evidence, a K-bar knife sheath branded with U.S. Marine Corps logo. We know a lot about this already. That had been found next to one of the two victims. They initially began looking for stores that may have sold the weapon, and then fanned out. And I can verify to you that they did look at that one store on Highway 8 in Moscow. The a bait and tackle type of like a sportsman shop. A big sportsman shop. It's the biggest one in there, because I went in there and talked to the I guess she was the manager, but she didn't comment. She didn't talk to me, but she said she couldn't, and she has no comment. And she looked at me and just said, sorry, she can't talk, to pretty much giving me the eye contact validation that authorities were in there. I think they went to a lot of different places, didn't they? But what's up with the Nissan Sentra? Do you think that could make a difference in this case? I'm seriously asking because I'm kind of like wondering. Would it make a difference? What do you think? The overall data track was growing enormous, demonstrating the extensive breadth of data on consumer platforms that can be made accessible to law enforcement agencies when they are at the stage of hunting for breadcrumbs. You could say this is uncharted territory, Mr. Kerr said. They are novel legal questions when there are so many records out there. That was the flyer. At the time, DNA from the scene was being processed. Forensic teams had examined the knife sheath and found DNA that did not belong to any of the people in the house. They ran the sample through the FBI's database, which contained millions of DNA profiles of past criminal offenders. But according to 3 people briefed on the case, they did not get a match. No match. This is confirmation now here about the genetic genealogy. At that point, investigators decided to try genetic genealogy, a method that used until now has been used primarily to solve cold cases, not active MUR-DER investigations. Among the growing numbers of genealogy websites that help people trace their ancestors and relatives via their own DNA, some allow users to select an option that permits law enforcement to compare crime scene DNA samples against the website's data. A distant cousin who has opted out into the system can help investigators build a family tree from crime scene DNA to triangulate the identity of potential perpetrator of the crime. That's so amazing that concept works. Think about it, though. You have a distant relative or a relative you hardly even talk to, whatever like that, and on their own time they want to go into the system and they want to submit their DNA to check their ancestors or whatnot. Now their DNA is in the system. Genetic DNA, now they have it. Now they can, look and kind of build a family tree on someone, on everybody, actually. And the chances are you having a family member that could put that in nowadays is pretty strong. Somebody quoted again, New York Times. And I get it. That's why I'm asking you, is this report legit or not? Once a suspect is identified, a direct genetic comparison can be used as confirmation before making an arrest. With few formal regulations, the use of mass genealogy databases has raised concerns about privacy and whether limits should be placed on how the method is used. But authorities across the country say they have found potential in the system to produce leads that are unattainable through traditional investigative efforts. Barbara Ray, a genealogy consultant who worked on the Golden State KILLER case, said there were now growing interest in using genetic DNA, not just in cold cases, but also in active criminal investigations. That is why the Idaho case is so interesting. To do genetic analysis, the Idaho State Police contracted with the private company Othram in Texas. And I did a report the other day about this company, a video specifically titled Othram, which had a lab able to produce a more extensive DNA profile from the knife sheath than the state lab was set up to examine. That's a pretty good picture. Thank you, Moscow PD, state, and federal investigators. Swan family, that's a sign. FBI personnel who work with the public that Othram had produced, according to 2 people familiar with the investigation, spending days building out a family tree that began with a distant relative. By the early morning of December 19th, records show investigators had a name, Bryan Kohberger. He had a white Hyundai Elantra, and he was a student university 8 miles from the murder scene. So they're pretty much saying in this report, December 19th was the day they got Kohberger, and they got him through the genealogy DNA. That's what this report is saying. December 19th was the day. At that time, Kohberger was already in Pennsylvania. Mr. Kohberger was already out of town, his semester complete. He had driven home with his father to Pennsylvania, stopped twice by the police along the way for what officers said was tailgating. We already did a video about it possibly being a drug stop. Just as agents began to scour his background more thoroughly, he had been terminated from his position as a teacher assistant. So what's interesting here in this report is saying he was terminated from his job before he was arrested, after what was described as altercations with the professor. I don't know if I believe that, because the way I saw it, he was on their webpage as still being, with that university on December 30th. They didn't scrub his name off of that. I didn't see it. Did you? On December 23rd, investigators sought and received Kohberger's cell phone records. So really, they got a match on the DNA, the genetic DNA, before they actually got his cell phone records in a warrant. December 23rd, investigators sought and received Kohberger's cell phone records. The results added more to their suspicions. His phone was moved around during the early morning hours of November 13th, but was disconnected from cell networks, perhaps turned off, in 2 hours around where the murders happened. 4 days later, agents in Pennsylvania managed to retrieve some trash from Kohberger's family residence, sending the material to the Idaho State Lab Forensic Lab. Checking it against their original DNA profile, the lab was able to reach a game-changing conclusion. The DNA in the trash belonged to a close relative of whoever left the DNA on the knife sheet. But I don't understand that, because you're identifying Kohberger already on the 19th through genetic genealogy DNA. It's so confusing. Mr. Kohberger was arrested on December 30th. We have an individual in custody who committed these horrible crimes, and I do believe our community is safe, the police chief Fry said, announced. But we will still need to be vigilant, right? So there you have it, folks. It's very, very confusing. Caroline says, I am confused too. I'm confused. I'm confused about the make and models of the vehicle. I'm confused about the dates. I'm confused about the genetic DNA, but still had to go get DNA at the end of the month from the trash to match. So what is the truth here? Do we believe this report by the New York Times? And a lot of it's new information. Again, they were looking for different suspects at the time in December. Classmates of the victims, a man in another state who was known to send harassing messages to women, but had only visited Idaho only twice in his life. Who's that? They looked at women previously charged with assault in the region. They even looked at registered SOs. They looked at a white supremacist. Who's the white supremacist? That's like new information to me. So that's where we're at, people. I just wanted to share that. You can dissect it. I just wanted to jump on board. Papa Roger. A lot of curiosity about Papa Roger. But he's for another conversation. Papa Roger, I don't know. I already expressed my opinion that I do not believe Papa Roger was Kohberger. I believe Papa Roger was tied to somebody in Indiana, involved with Indiana issues, school board. But who knows? Who knows? Well, so what do you guys think? What do you think about, is any of this stuff, could any of this stuff, the way they investigated Bryan Kohberger, be exculpatory in any way? Can any of it be exculpatory that will actually help Bryan Kohberger beat his case or help him get a deal? A lot of times when there is reasonable doubt, prosecutors also make deals, try to make a deal because they don't want to risk it. But I think the case is solid, personally. I think the case is solid as can be. So what's your thoughts? Happy Sunday, everyone. I'm going to be reading your comments. It's so bizarre. But here we go. What's going to come out next week? Any new information going to come out next week? It remains to be seen. I think the judge, Judge John, is going to give a ruling on the non-dissemination gag order. But I'm curious about this Sentra, Nissan Sentras that they were originally looking for, and how it went from Sentra, 2019 to 2023 Sentras, how it went from Sentras to white Hyundai Elantras at 2011 to 13, them checking Kohberger and seeing that he had a 15 in the end of November, and then put out bulletins in the early December saying that they're looking for 11 to 13, knowing that Kohberger has a 15. Can someone make sense? How does that make sense? Somebody said, I heard it was a Kia Forte. You know, I don't know. Make that make sense, people. Make the discrepancy in the vehicles and the confusion of the vehicles make sense. A lot of things don't make sense. But we're trying to get to the bottom of it, and we're trying to figure this out collectively, all of us, trying to get answers. I appreciate you guys watching. Share this video and subscribe to my channel. Hit the notification button if you haven't. We're on this case extensively, covering it on all angles. Whatever news reports come out, we share. You decide if that news report I just read from the New York Times is accurate or not. The reporter's pretty good reporter. You know, you work for the Times, you're a pretty good reporter. But there was a lot of unnamed sources in there, that report. And they're saying records. Well, where do these records come from? I didn't see these things on records. All right, guys, be safe. Have a wonderful Sunday. We'll talk soon. Stay tuned. God bless.